it is time to do an NWSL Check-In. I kind of did this with Major League Soccer a couple weeks ago. It's the halfway point of the NWSL regular season, so that makes it a perfect time. European season is now over, so kind of shifting focus to MLS, NWSL, and summer competitions. So I'm just going to roll through all the teams and just kind of recap the season so far and a couple kind of big takeaways or things that to me are going to be storylines in the second half of the season. We're going to go from top to bottom, so starting with the San Diego Wave. You can see the table right in front of you. These are your 6 playoff teams right now, and then I've got another table with the teams trying to get into the playoffs. The San Diego team just gets better and better after starting so well last season. Really good defensively. Only 11 goals allowed. That's one off the league best. Jaden Shaw has really started to come into her own. Alex Morgan is still scoring goals, of course. So they've got some dynamic, not just Alex Morgan, but some dynamic attacking talent and a really good young player in Jaden Shaw who was just kind of getting integrated last season. That's one of the big upgrades you've seen in terms of taking that next step for this team is now she is not just a promising player with a lot of talent, she is a impact player game in and game out. And you're seeing that this season. The other thing I'll point out is they've played 7 road games. They've won 4 of them. So this is going to even come back around where they're going to be set up well with a bunch of home games in the second half of the season here. So they're in a really, really good spot. Naomi Gurman just signed a contract extension. I could talk about her all day long. They're in a really good spot for the long term and for right now as one of the best teams in the league right now at the top of the table. Tied on points are the Washington Spirit. I said in my season preview, I really expected this team to bounce back. I thought last season was just kind of a weird one. There was so much going on off the field that there was a really good argument with the amount of talent still on this roster that they were going to be right back in the playoffs and competing for a championship again. Didn't necessarily expect it to be because they're tied for the best defensive record in the league with 10 goals allowed. That's the big story here. The other part of this is Ashley Hatch is right up there near the top of the goal scoring charts. And yet, if you look at the underlying numbers, they suggest she could be even more productive, which is a really good sign for the Spirit. And by that, I mean she is blowing everybody else away in terms of expected goals plus assists per 90 minutes. As in, significantly more than Sophia Smith is creating for the Portland Thorns. So that suggests and specifically on the goal side of this, there are more goals to be had. The opportunities are being created. So you could even see improved production as good as Ashley Hatch has been. There's another level, at least it seems possible according to the numbers that she could reach. That if she just gets a little bit more clinical, we're talking about a couple extra goals that she can add to what she's already giving you. And the other part of this is Ashley Sanchez has 2 goals and no assists. The attack has not been as dynamic as it could be. It's been good enough, and defensively they've been excellent. And so I look at both of these teams, Washington and San Diego, for different reasons, but to say I believe in this, 1, and 2, I believe they could be even better in the second half of the season and even more impressive by the time we get to the playoffs. The foundation is there, but there is still room to grow. San Diego, primarily because they've played so many road games. Washington, primarily because I think there's another gear this attack can find. That is still Ashley Hatch, Trinity Rodman, Ashley Sanchez. I will continue to believe in that trio. They've been really good so far. But there might just be a little bit more that you can get out of them in the second half of the season. That's really exciting if you're a Spirit fan. I mentioned them briefly. Portland Thorns are in 3rd. There is no disputing who has the best attack in the league. You've got, of course, Sophia Smith, who is the best player in the league. You've got your typical contributors your, Morgan Weavers of the world. Crystal Dunn is back. Christine Sinclair is still doing her thing. Then you have the addition of Olivia Moultrie to give you another creative force. She has been really good in the minutes she's gotten. And there's also the reality that Crystal Dunn, Morgan Weaver, and Sophia Smith have scored more goals between the three of them than 5 of the 11 other teams in this league. They are clicking on all cylinders. It's not just Sophia Smith. Sophia Smith is also, I believe, leading the league in assists. There just isn't much else to say. The question will be, can they do enough defensively? There is no doubt who's got the most attacking talent and the most well-balanced attack and the best player. I will always have a fear in knockout competitions, though, if you're trying to outscore everybody every single game. And that's not necessarily been the case, but they haven't been quite as good defensively as the two teams in front of them in the table right now. And that's why, despite all the goals they've scored, they're still a point behind. Now, it's early, they've got time to fix this, and it's not like they've been horrible defensively. But if you're poking a hole, that's what it is, because there's just nothing to say about them offensively. They're spectacular. Also on 19 points, OL Reign. First thing I want to recognize, OL Reign undefeated at home. Not the only team, but I thought it was significant to mention here because they have 5 home wins. Now, they've also played 7 home games, but they are picking up points at Lumen Field. The concern, to me, is a very simple one. You have goal scorers, multiple goal scorers, primarily Bethany Balser, Jordan Heidema. Those are also players who are poachers, finishers, not kind of these complete balanced forwards like a Sophia Smith, where you're expecting to get goals and assists. They are goal scorers in the purest sense of the number 9. So that means you need people creating. And right now, Megan Rapinoe has 4 assists, and that's about all this team has gotten, in large part because Rose Lavelle has missed most of the season. So we're having a different conversation if Rose Lavelle is back healthy, ready to go when it matters in the playoffs. But for right now, that is what is holding this team back. And obviously, that's part of what Rose Lavelle gives you. This team was designed to have her, and Jess Fishlock can give you some of that as well. It just hasn't really happened yet this season. So you got the goal scorers. That's not the problem. But those goal scorers can only be so helpful if they don't have people creating chances for them. And it's got to be more than just Megan Rapinoe. That is my one holdup with OL Reign right now. Because I love this roster. It is stacked. It just seems like there's kind of this next level that you can talk yourself into them reaching, and they don't always do it for one reason or another, and injuries are certainly part of that and part of the story this season. Because they're doing just fine. They're 1 point off of the leaders. You add Rose Lavelle back into that conversation, they're right there among the favorites, maybe the favorite. But right now, that's not happening. How long does it actually take to get Rose Lavelle back? What does that look like? Those are all questions OL Reign are going to have to answer in the second half of the season. Right behind them, perhaps the story of the season so far, New York, New Jersey, Gotham. Gotham are 2 points back of San Diego and Washington, despite having 1 win at home, in large part because they are tied for the best defense in the league with 10 goals allowed. Again, this is another spot where it's really easy to find optimism. If they just start winning some home games, they're going to be right there. They are a playoff team. That much they've already proven. They've been really, really good. Question is, are they more than a playoff team? Can they host a playoff game? Those kind of things. A lot of it has to do with Lynn Williams, who's been really, really good. And then the other part of this is outside of her, without Midge Purse, you just don't have a lot of attacking weapons that you can consistently rely upon. You got all these options in midfield. That's fantastic. Defensively, they've been excellent. The the next level for this for me is getting Midge Purse back and making sure you have her and Lynn Williams available and ready to go and playing well. That's how you go from being a playoff team to being a contender. Because you just can't rely on one person to carry the load. As good as Lynn Williams has been. So again, kind of like the Reign, they're just got to see what this all looks like and whether you get your full complement of players by playoff time. Because otherwise, I will have some concerns about how far they can go in the playoffs. Because Gotham are a playoff team. And it should be recognized that is an incredible statement to make this early in the season, and me be that confident in saying so, considering where this club has been for most of its existence and certainly recently, as they've kind of tried all these different variations and all this turnover trying to get to this point, and finally have found the right combination from coach to squad, all that stuff. So bravo to Gotham. Really excited to see what they can do the rest of this season. Hopefully Midge Purse is back soon and can stay healthy, and you've got your kind of two primary attackers because you need that secondary option to take some of the pressure off of Lynn Williams. Speaking of carrying the attack, there is one player in the league with 7 goals. That is Caroline with the North Carolina Courage. She has 7, the team has 15. That's how vital she has been to their attack. I said this coming out of the Courage winning the Challenge Cup. Caroline is phenomenal. And you saw the raw potential, and now it's kind of all coming together. And I am not surprised by this in the slightest. This is, to me, 100% legit. Just getting the opportunity to carry this team, and that's exactly what's happening. My concern here, similar to what I just talked about with Gotham, is where is your secondary dynamic attacker? To me, having somebody score half your goals is not really a sustainable formula. And it's also not a sustainable formula when you are kind of waiting to find even your primary creator. It's a different dynamic if Dabinia is still there. Maybe not scoring the goals, but being the focal point of the attack. Obviously, Dabinia no longer there. And so you're getting some contributions from other players, but it's one thing to be in the playoff conversation, which the Courage certainly have the ability to and obviously are right now. It's another thing to be able to go beat the San Diegos, the Washingtons, the Portlands, the OL Reigns. And that's, to me, where this Gotham and North Carolina Courage conversation is. Not just can you make the playoffs, but do you have what it takes to make a playoff run? Where are we drawing this line in terms of contenders? Because certainly, to me, the top 4 are. Got to see about 5 and 6, but Courage off to a good start as well. Then you've got the bottom half of the league, starting with the Houston Dash as the last team looking into the playoff picture from the outside. Another team, 10 goals allowed, tied for the best defense in the league. Another team looking for help in attack. Maria Sanchez is the only player on this team with 3 or more goal involvements. That is the difference between your top teams who have Jaden Shaw and Alex Morgan, Trinity Rodman and Ashley Hatch, Sophia Smith and Crystal Dunn. OL Reign, same kind of story. And these other teams that have one player having a great season and then not getting enough around them. That's what it's going to come down to, right? They're a point back right now To me, they're right there in that same conversation with the Courage. I do have Gotham as kind of I sort of view this as four contenders, a team I am very confident is going to make the playoffs, and then the teams competing for the last playoff spots and we'll call them the underdogs or teams that I don't really see making the playoffs. Houston definitely in that playoff conversation, just not closer to the Courage than Gotham for me. I know it's only a point difference right now, but I really do feel like Gotham is going to separate coming down the stretch here. But good start for Houston. Just got to see if you can find another attacking piece. Maybe somebody gets hot and that ends up being the difference to get you into the playoffs. After that, you have the Orlando Pride. Contributions from all kind of players, which is really exciting to see for a team that's gone through some turnover and not necessarily expecting too much from them this season. There have been some really good individual performances and kind of things to build off of from a personnel standpoint. At the same time, not scoring enough goals, less than one a game, and a -6 goal difference. This is kind of deceiving in terms of the table and what the eye test says is they have probably overachieved a little bit and just kind of, when they've lost badly, and when they've won close games, and that's not necessarily sustainable in terms of not just staying where they are, but making that jump to get into the playoff picture. Then you got Racing Louisville. Remarkably, only 2 of those 11 games are wins, and yet Louisville have a positive goal difference. It's +1, but it is still positive. Samantha DeMello has been really, really good. It's the same story here. Can you find a second player to really start complementing and clean things up defensively a little bit? They're just kind of average to good in every area. And you could argue they just have caught some bad breaks. If Orlando's been fortunate and kind of overachieving, you could argue Louisville's underachieving a little bit. You're also 5 points back of the last playoff spot with half the season gone. I do think the ceiling is definitely higher for this team in terms of, I do think, if you're asking me which one, Orlando or Louisville, gets into the playoff conversation, I'm betting on Louisville. I'm just not sold on the ceiling being the 6th best team in the league. I feel like it's more 7 or 8, which isn't all that far off from where they are right now. You just got to find kind of something to build around. And I think that's part of Louisville's problem right now is it's just nothing's bad. They're kind of in the middle of the pack of everything. But when you're in the middle of the pack, you leave yourself open to these kind of the fluctuations and the weird results not going your way. And all of a sudden, you've got 12 points from 11 games. Then the Chicago Red Stars, they've given up twice as many goals as they've scored, and they have scored 14, which means they are far and away the worst defensive team in the league. They've lost half of the 6 home games they've played. Obviously, this all comes with what happened with Mallory Swanson. If you needed further justification for her MVP candidacy, here you go. I am slightly surprised the issues have been so extreme on the defensive side, considering all of the attacking and midfield pieces this team lost. But also, that midfield plays a huge role in making sure you're on the same page with that back line, and they rebuilt the entire thing this offseason. And so you just feel for them. It's just kind of an unfortunate series of events. It's just one thing after another. And look, despite the goal difference, they're still within striking distance. This can turn around. I certainly don't see it turning around, but they're they're hanging in there at least. And then you got your last two teams, Angel City. Another disappointing start to the season. There's so much hype, so much excitement. San Diego Wave doing so well, and it just kind of hasn't happened for Angel City yet. However, you look at the teams that they're going to have to catch to get into the playoff mix. Those teams don't have a trio of Julie Ertz, Sydney Leroux, and Alyssa Thompson. Alyssa Thompson has been sensational. I'm not convinced that pick and that move to make sure that they got her is getting enough credit. That is your cornerstone for the next decade. And she has proven it right away. And with the San Diego team that already, had Alex Morgan and then landed Naomi Girma, you needed that piece to build around and to say, this is Angel City moving forward. And you've gotten it. Alyssa Thompson has been everything she was advertised as. So you add that, because right now you have a teenager carrying your team. That is not how this is supposed to work. But Sydney Leroux comes back. Julie Ertz getting added into the mix. Will it be too late? It's entirely possible. But if there's a team that is going to go on a tear in the second half of the season, to me it is Angel City. Because you can easily talk yourself into a world where the last 8 games of the season, all 3 of those players are starting and they're a completely different team. And you catch a couple breaks along the way, and all of a sudden, you're taking 20 plus points from your final 8 games, and you're back in the playoff conversation at the very least, if not actually in the playoffs. So it's got the unfortunate thing about this short season and the World Cup in there as well, in terms of Julie Ertz probably, is you just don't have time to kind of let this thing build and figure it out like you do in MLS. You're 8 points back right now. It's not over yet. But you don't have another 10 games to let Julie Ertz get integrated after the World Cup. The results have to start coming to make sure that you don't completely eliminate yourself before, hypothetically, when you're going to be at your best with all these players back, full fitness, game shape, all of those kind of things. And then perhaps the biggest surprise from an unpleasant standpoint so far this season, Kansas City Current down at the bottom also on 9 points. I did not expect it to go this way. I did kind of encourage people to slow down a little bit on the Current until you actually saw this team on the field and what they could do. And because it was easy to talk, and I bought into the roster. It was easy to get excited about that roster. And your only real addition that's making a significant impact is Dabinia. And this is a team that was good, not great last season, struggled to score goals. And certainly I did not expect them to be here. To me, even if you just added Dabinia, that's at the very least, a playoff team. But all of a sudden, you're halfway through the season with 0 wins from 4 road games and 4 losses in your 7 home games. That's the other part of this, is they've got that flip the second half of the season. They have already played 7 times at home and got 9 points. It would be really, really impressive to me if they found a way to finish any higher than 9th, 10th. And yes, they're only 4 points back of Orlando right now. But you had the home games. You haven't gotten what you expected from all of the, all of your new players. And so here they are. And it's another reminder of what makes this league so great, which is the parity. You just get a couple, whether it's an injury, player not producing the way you expect, one or two things just go the wrong way. And all of a sudden, you go from being one of the favorites to one of the worst teams in the league. And that's not just Kansas City, that could go for anybody. Washington Spirit last year, too. Couldn't, had that incredibly long stretch where they couldn't win a game. And here they are tied up top of the table. You just never know, and you need so many things to go right, especially when you don't have 3 or 4 players who can carry your team at any given moment. To me, that's really the theme of this season so far. Because you look at the top of that table, and, San Diego have been fairly healthy. We know what the Spirit have. The Thorns, same thing. You've got plenty of options there. OL Reign doing fine without Rose Lavelle. Right? Does it take you from being the best team in the league to the 4th best team in the league if you lose a Rose Lavelle, if you lose a Sophia Smith, if you lose an Alex Morgan, Ashley Sanchez, whoever? Yeah. But it doesn't cost you a playoff spot when you have those other quality players that are some of the best players in the league to cover up for that. That's the issues you're seeing. And Gotham have been pretty good without Midge Purce as well. That's the difference. Kansas City, even with Dabinia, they lacked those high-end difference makers last season and haven't really added enough, even with all these additions that they were supposed to get all this production from. Angel City, you lose Christian Press. All of a sudden, you're back, and you lose Sydney Leroux, and Julie Ertz is working her way back, and you're right there near the bottom of the table. Chicago, lose Mallory Swanson. There you go. The margins are that thin. It's what makes this league great, and that's what you've seen so far this season.